Hi everyone. I just wanted to take a few minutes to introduce you to the textbook, let you know a little bit about what it's about, and we're going to look at it together here. So this is the textbook you should have, Touchstone 3. So you'll see it's nice and green color, number 3, that's the one you want. Hopefully you already have a copy, and you can look at this even in our class today. If you don't have it, please get a copy as soon as you can. You can order it online, or you can go to the bookstore. With this online study we're doing in order to stay safe from coronavirus, of course we're trying to stay away from giant classrooms and things like that. But if you need to go to the bookstore or something, I think it'll be okay to get a copy at a larger bookstore, Kyobo Munko or something like that, or just in the university bookstore, but you can order it online. And again, hopefully you already have your copy. We should have been using this copy a month ago, but we're having this new date to start the semester due to this delay. So this is the textbook you should have, and if you don't have it today, get it as soon as possible, because we're going to be looking at it from next week. And of course, once we're in the classroom, hopefully 2 weeks from now, we can be using it as a important resource that you must have in order to participate in the class. It's going to be very difficult to do anything in the class if you don't have a textbook, because we're going to be using it a lot. So let's take a look here. I have a digital version, as you can see here. So you can follow along if you happen to have a digital copy, maybe scanned on a tablet. You can use that, or of course if you have the physical paper copy, then you can use that. So let's look at that together. Going forward, kind of the legal stuff, blah blah blah. So let's look at what we're going to be covering. The units we're going to be covering, we're not going to do these 6 units. Instead, we're only going to do 3 of them. But let's look at a little bit of how you can prepare for what's coming ahead, what this textbook has in material, and how to get accustomed to it. So I'm going to zoom in here. So you can see here we have some general goals for each of the units, just basic things that the unit covers. Over here, the grammar that we're going to be focusing on. So for example, in Unit 2, present perfect statements, present perfect and simple past questions and answers. So if you're unfamiliar with present perfect grammar, for example, you might want to take some time, look online, and you can just type in present perfect grammar, or you can type that into Naver or something for a Korean resource, or any other language for that matter, and become familiar, a little bit of extra practice to help you with the textbook material. Vocabulary, it'll show you each type of vocabulary that we're going to be learning. In this case, past participles of irregular verbs. That's a little complicated, but don't worry about that. We're just going to look at that one case at a time. It sounds more complicated than it really is. Pronunciation, bottom, how to work on pronunciation, speaking naturally, what sounds right. So you'll get a grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation guide for each of these units. And if we look at, if we look at all of this together, if we go to the right here, we can also see some of the skills we'll be learning. Interaction, when we're doing speaking in class, you can see how to keep a conversation going. Use response questions like do you and have you to show your interest, because for having a conversation, you want to show your interest. We're going to look at skills, special skills that you'll be learning: listening, reading, writing, and free talking. And these are all different areas. So for example, again, looking at Unit 2, what have they done? A traveler's adventures. So you can get accustomed to hearing stories about that, because if you don't know what you're going to be listening for, if you don't know what to expect to hear, it's going to be difficult to follow. But if you know what to expect in a conversation, it's going to help you be able to understand it a little bit better. If you're hearing someone talking about cooking, you're going to be more prepared for that if you're standing in a kitchen. where if you're on the subway and someone is talking about cooking, that's going to be a little bit strange. So the context, the situation that you're in can help you expect what you're going to hear, and that's going to make it a little bit easier. For reading, it'll tell you what kind of things you're going to be reading to improve your reading skills. In this case, Unit 2 will be travel blogs, so we'll be talking about travel. Writing, when we're looking at writing and how to write things down, writing a blog entry about an exciting experience using adverbs, particular adverbs. So these are the kind of things that you might be reading and writing about. And free talking. That's really one of the best things to do. Certainly the most interesting way to learn a language is just to talk, just to use it. So we'll be able to talk about things we've never done before and new experiences that someone else may have had that you haven't done. For self-study, you'll see there's a vocabulary notebook, kind of a vocabulary area at the end of each unit. And have you ever? We'll talk about experiences. So if you look at this, you can preview all of the units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I encourage you, just have a look at this. Don't spend a lot of time. You certainly don't have to memorize this, but you might want to look over what to expect. That's going to be a good way to help you prepare for what we're going to do in class each day. And again, we're starting with Unit 2. We're not starting with Unit 1. We're not going to do that. So I'm just going to take my marker here. I'm going to put a red line. I'm going to put an X there through Unit 1. Instead, we're going to start with Unit 2. So remember that. We're going to start with this, and that's what we're going to look at a little bit today. But we're not going to be doing Unit 1 this semester. We're going to start right with Unit 2. And I'll tell you the reason for that is simply because I think Unit 2 is a little more interesting than Unit 1. And I tried to pick units that seem to be the most interesting to talk about, interesting to deal with. So I'm just going to erase this. I'm just going to erase my little circle here. Keep it nice and clean for you. And boop, there we go. Boop, there we are. Okay, so that is a little bit about the structure of our textbook. Now let's move forward here. And units 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, those are going to be another semester. That'll be in the fall semester. I think you don't need to worry about that. So I'm going to bring this up here. And there's a little preview here on the next page. What language is used for? Let me zoom out a little bit. So you can see some phrases. You can see working in groups and checking your partner's work if you're working together with other people. These are some phrases that you might be seeing. And good phrases to have in your vocabulary, in your mind as you're speaking. All right, let's go ahead and let's look at the structure of Unit 2. So before you begin, each unit we're going to start with this page. So this is the finishing page of Unit 1. Again, I'm going to put a big X here because we're not going to be using that. We don't want to worry about that right now. You can look at it if you want. Certainly there's some good information, but that's not what we're going to be studying. Instead, we're going to start here with experiences, Unit number 2. So we can preview each unit as we're going to preview Unit 2. And then we turn to the next page, Lesson A. It's going to have some basic introduction, some conversation to begin, some conversation, so getting started. That's a good thing to start with, getting started. So we look at this, we're going to do a listening activity, and we're going to hear each of these people speak, or we might just have you read that out loud. Now, if we're working from home, it's going to be difficult to read to one another, so it might be better to just use an audio file. But if we're in the classroom, I might ask one person to pretend to be this Jill Richardson in Vancouver. I might ask people to read Sonia and Carlos Silvia's experience, Rachel and Hiro, depending on what we're doing. And there will be grammar very important here, the big grammar. Put a big G there for grammar, exclamation point. So when we are starting a unit, we're going to have new grammar that we're going to look at, and we're going to have examples that we can go through. Common errors. People usually make very similar mistakes that the textbook writers have prepared for us. So when you see these common errors, look over it very quickly and carefully, because these are mistakes that learners of English often make, and it might be a mistake that you would make. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's totally normal, but it's something that you can watch out for. Avoid those traps, because as you know, English grammar is very complicated. If we turn to the next page, we can see building language. This is where we start to work on our vocabulary sections. If you start with a listening activity, you can become familiar with the topic. Some activities to look at the grammar, using the grammar from the previous page, page 13, and this is pages 14 and 15. More vocabulary building that you might talk about. And speaking. This is where we start to talk about pronunciation and using the vocabulary and grammar that we've built so far. If we turn to the next page, lesson C, here we start to look at conversation strategy and different things you might talk about. Here's a conversation that some native speakers might have, some expressions and phrases that you might be hearing, that you might be using, certainly from the conversation. Response questions, how to have a conversation, so kind of how to build our conversation skills with the grammar and vocabulary that we learned before. Now we can put it together. And listening and strategies. Same thing, we want to improve our listening skills as well. And lesson D, this is reading, where we kind of look at some information. We've built some grammar, we've built some vocabulary, we've built some discussion ability, and now we can look at new information. We can actually learn something new, put it together, look at the new ideas, the new grammar, the new vocabulary, and get some new information in your mind. There, you can use that information to have some conversations, check to make sure you understand this reading, and hear some experiences that other people have. So that's the basic structure of our textbook if we go through each of these units. So here we've got grammar, kind of the mechanics of what we'll be learning. The vocabulary, the words we'll be using, how to put that together, how to discuss it through conversation, and then how to get and discuss new information through reading. And that's the basic structure. Each of our units are going to be like that. When you're done with a unit, you can look at vocabulary notebook, and this way we can kind of put it all together. It's a little bit of a summary with a little bit of checking. It's not a quiz, but it's something like a quiz. It's something that you can see, help you figure out what you're strong at and what you're weak at, and kind of keep those things organized in your mind. Also, this is going to be part of your homework. There is also a workbook. If we look here, it looks very similar. If we look at if I go to the student book and we go to the title page, can I see the cover again? Oh, I'm not able to do that right now. That's okay. If we look at there we go, there's the cover. That's what I'm looking for. So if we look at the student book, but then the workbook is very similar. Student workbook, it's a little bit lighter, but quite similar looking. Here, this is going to be the way we do our homework. So if I come to Unit 2, I come to this, it's all black and white. It's printable. This is important. It's printable. So if you can do this digitally, if we're doing this through the online format, if we still are doing this online class a few weeks from now, there's always the chance that the virus will remain a problem, so much so that we are not able to go to the classroom when we expect. If there is a further delay, we may have to do this homework digitally. So we'll prepare for that as we need to, but the plan is I will put this document on the Cyber Campus for you to print and then bring to class to submit to me. That, if we're doing that, it means we're in the classroom and things are back things are back to normal. If it's possible to be normal this semester with all the strange things happening. But when you are doing the homework, you'll print it, you'll complete the activities, and you will submit them. So you'll do that physically. So here, so you see page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. It'll be 8 pages, and here at the end you'll see the end. So that's going to be the way that we do our homework each semester. So let's look at that a little bit. I'm going to go back to the first part. And remember, the structure of our textbook is grammar, vocabulary, speaking, reading, and listening. Here we kind of put it all together. So you'll follow these activities and you'll write down some experiences that you have or have not had, and then you'll fill these in as necessary. Again, experiences that you've done using the grammar that you've learned. You notice that there's kind of a grammar connection at the beginning of the textbook, and there's grammar at the beginning of the workbook. However, you'll also be using vocabulary that you learned, because we're going to do the workbook at the end of the semester. At the end of each unit. At the end of each unit, each homework assignment will be due. So when we finish Unit 2, we'll leave, and then you'll have homework. Then we begin the next unit, and you'll give me the homework for Unit number 2. Very simple, and I'll tell you when those will be due. Here, again, we're talking about unusual experiences, Lesson B, using more vocabulary that we'll be learning through the semester. And you'll do these activities. Lesson C, conversation. As we said before, conversation. So here you'll look at phrases and expressions that a person might use in their conversation. Get these nice little cartoons here. You got 2 cool guys talking about surfing. You got 2 ladies, seems to be in a high school of some sort. They got lockers in the background. So you'll complete these activities. Very simple. And again, we're working at reading here. So you'll read information, then answer the questions as best you can, and use expressions to complete the final page. This is just a checklist for you to see if you can do everything well. To review, you can go back to these pages, and it'll tell you where to go if you want to check things over to improve your skills. If you're feeling like you did something well, that's great. You can look over what you did well. But if you did something poorly, you made some mistakes, that's not something you need to worry about. That just means you know your weakness. Everybody has their own weaknesses. Some people are good at vocabulary and terrible at grammar. Some people are great at vocabulary, but they can't understand what people say to them. These are all totally normal. Nobody is expected to be good at everything. So the secret is not to be good at everything, is to find what you're weak at and spend more time working on it. And if you're able to do that, you're going to kind of improve those weak skills and strengthen your strong skills even more, and then you'll be all set, ready to get that A+. So again, to review, you will complete each of these workbook assignments, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, print that, and then submit it to me later. This will be due, probably the first one will be due in about 4 or 5 weeks, depending on how quickly we are able to work, and I will announce that later. So don't worry, if you're not sure when it will be due, I'll be happy to tell you that when things are more certain. But you're probably looking at about around 4 to 5 weeks, depending on our working speed. How will you get that? I am going to, if we're in the classroom, I will put a PDF file of or an Adobe PDF file on the Cyber Campus. So you'll be able to see each unit at a time. I'm not going to put the entire workbook on the Cyber Campus because that's going to be too much information, too big a file. Instead, I'm only going to put one unit at a time. So there will be one unit posted when it's ready to be done. Then later I will post the final units. As we complete each unit, you can do the homework, print it, and then give it to me. Again, if you're working on a tablet, we'll work on that as we need to, as necessary. If we're still on a digital textbook, a digital classroom like we're doing with WebEx, then we will figure out a way to do that digitally. So don't worry. Kokjong hajimaseo. Don't worry too much about that. We are going to work on that together. Okay, so that's about it. That is a general summary of our textbook format. So again, a quick little review here. Here is our textbook, and here is our workbook. So be prepared to work with that. Hopefully you'll be able to at least have this ready to go on day one. Hopefully you've already got a copy. Alright, so what I recommend for you is to go over any parts of this little explanation that you have not understood clearly. I know it's a little boring, but it's important information. So go over anything that you're unfamiliar with. Repeat that. We're at about 20 minutes of this video, and I'm going to give you about 30 to 35 minutes to view it. So that's plenty of time for you to ask any questions, write down any questions that you have, and I'll be happy to answer them later. You can do that here in the class, or you can just review over. Just rewind back, read something again, listen to something again. Or if you're all set, get a cup of coffee, just relax for a few minutes, and meet back in the classroom in a few minutes at the time that I have given to you. Okay, thanks for listening, everybody. Take care, and I'll see you in the classroom. Bye-bye.